The first season of House of the Dragon has already made significant adjustments to the accepted Game of Thrones timeline, which makes sense for the tale, but also raises concerns about what lies ahead. It takes place in a Westeros that is both very similar to Game of Thrones, many of the most significant houses, locations, and customs remain the same, and very different, not the least of which is that it is ruled by House Targaryen and has a hell of a lot more dragons. The House of the Dragon timeline begins just under 200 years before Game of Thrones. The prequels timeline is made all the more intriguing by the peculiar way in which it is both more intimate and vast than Game of Thrones. Although there are other important characters, the plot of House of the Dragon, leading up to the Dance of the Dragons, is more focused on King's Landing and the inner workings of the Targaryens than Game of Thrones was. Game of Thrones' story stretched from the far north of Westeros to the south of Essos and featured several major houses in major roles. In contrast to Game of Thrones, which had a timeline of around 8 years, this story takes place over a considerably longer period of time and involves rivalries and resentments that will develop over a period of about 30 years. The timeline of House of the Dragon is therefore, maybe inevitably, altering some of the events that were previously established in Game of Thrones and the books. Viserys was designated as King Jaehaerys' heir at the Great Council of 101 AC, so the plot initially followed the same path. However, it quickly jumped ahead so that events are taking place much later than they do in George R.R. Martin's works. For instance, Viserys makes the decision to wed Alicent Hightower in House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 2. This takes place in approximately 112 AC in the show, but was 106 AC in the books. Aegon, Viserys and Alicent's first child, should have been born by now, 107 AC, according to the books, and the tournament that determines the Greens and Blacks factions in the Civil War should have taken place as well, however they haven't even gotten married. Aegon would still be a young adult, around the age of 15 to 16, when the Dance of the Dragons starts, as opposed to being 22 in the books, assuming he is born within the next couple of years. Given that Martin acknowledged House of the Dragon Season 1 spans 28 years, it appears unlikely that House of the Dragon will alter the beginning of the Dance of the Dragons because there is only so much room before beginning to encroach on other events in Westeros history. The official start date of the Targaryen Civil War in the books is 129 AC, which runs from the time of the Great Council until then. In contrast to Game of Thrones, where most of the characters were older than the books, if that is the case, it indicates that many of the characters involved, including the children of Alicent, will be considerably younger in the show. It's an intriguing twist, and the decision to advance House of the Dragon Season 1 Episode 1 to the 9th year of King Viserys' rule means that the program will have to jam more into its timeline, but that's not necessarily a negative. Numerous things can still happen at the predetermined times, and this strategy enables Alicent and Rhaenyra's link to grow even stronger before it is severed, which thus far appears to be a wise decision. The story of House of the Dragon can still be worked into having, say, Aegon be several years younger when vying for the Iron Throne. In fact, bringing Alicent's and Rhaenyra's children closer in age will make their rivalries seem more equal and may even out the situation. Given the scope of House of the Dragon, changes to the Game of Thrones timeline may have been inevitable, but after 2 episodes, the series' decisions have been vindicated.